Let me tell you what's actually happening, not as a prediction, not as politics, just as a pattern you can verify yourself. Ukraine became a full land war in Europe, the first since World War II. The Middle East escalated beyond anything the region had seen in decades. Tensions in the South China Sea are being tested in ways that make military analysts genuinely nervous. And every single one of these situations has sent the same ripple effects into ordinary life. Inflation spikes, supply chain disruptions, energy cost surges, straight into the wallets of people on fixed incomes. That's what this video is actually about, not doomsday. Financial strategy: where does a social security check genuinely hold its value when the global economy gets rough? I'm ranking 5 countries worst to best. Strengths, honest weaknesses, exactly who each country is right for, and one brutal filter question per country that forces you to decide if it actually fits your life. But first, the move most people consider and why it isn't enough. Moving to Texas or Arizona can lower your rent. It cannot lower your exposure. Every U.S. state shares the same supply chains, the same Federal Reserve inflation cycles, the same currency vulnerabilities. When systemic pressure hits, it hits all 50 states simultaneously. International relocation offers something domestic simply can't: a cost structure genuinely disconnected from American inflation cycles. It's not for everyone, but for the right person, on the right income, it changes everything. Here are the 5 countries worth understanding clearly, starting with the one that looks most appealing on the surface, and carries risks most people completely underestimate. This isn't about the best country, it's about avoiding the wrong one for your situation. Number 5, Georgia. Picture this for a second: visa-free entry, stay up to a year with zero paperwork, apartments in Tbilisi for $500 to $700 a month, a cost of living so low that your social security check feels like real money for the first time in years. Ancient mountain villages, a food culture that genuinely surprises people, a hospitality tradition so warm that most Westerners who visit don't want to leave. Financially and culturally, Georgia makes a compelling case. But here's the problem, and it's one that most expat content glosses over completely because it kills the fantasy they're selling you. Georgia shares a direct land border with Russia. Now, precision matters more than drama here. This isn't an argument that invasion is imminent. The probability of a full-scale Russian military move into Georgia's population centers in the near term is not high. But here's what is fully verifiable. In 2008, Russia moved military forces into Georgian territory and took control of roughly 20% of the country. The international response was limited. The situation never resolved. Russia still holds that territory today, 16 years later. And Georgia has no NATO membership, meaning there is no collective defense guarantee of the kind that makes military action against Poland or Estonia a far more complicated calculation for Moscow. The risk isn't certainty, it's asymmetry. If something does happen, even well short of full-scale war, the disruption to banking, infrastructure, and your ability to move yourself and your money out quickly would be severe. A retiree in their late 60s or early 70s with no NATO evacuation obligation is extraordinarily exposed in that scenario. Then there's the internal fracture. Georgia's government has been drifting pro-Russia while its population remains largely pro-EU. That tension has produced serious street protests and political instability that bleeds into everyday life in ways that hit long-term residents hardest. Here's a scenario worth sitting with. 2 retirees, both on $1,400 a month. One picks Georgia for the $600 apartment and the $800 monthly surplus that finally lets them breathe. The other picks Panama for stability and healthcare access. For 3 years, the Georgia retiree looks like a genius. Then, instability spikes. Banking gets complicated. The exit plan they never fully built becomes suddenly urgent. At 71, that's not an adventure, that's a crisis. The brutal filter question for Georgia: can you realistically pack up, access your money, and be on a flight out within 30 days if the situation changes? If the honest answer is no, Georgia's risk profile doesn't match your actual life. Who Georgia is right for: mobile, flexible retirees at the younger end of retirement age with a clear exit strategy, strong physical health, and the financial ability to relocate quickly. Not recommended for anyone with complex medical needs, limited mobility, or who wants to settle permanently without serious contingency planning. Number 4, Portugal. Portugal sits at the top of almost every expat retirement ranking you'll find, and for a long time, it genuinely deserved to be there. Safety scores, among the highest in Europe. English is widely spoken across major cities, the healthcare system is solid, the weather along the Algarve is legitimately excellent. The food, the history, the culture, all of it is real. And sitting inside the European Union provides institutional stability that most of the world simply cannot match. On paper, Portugal still looks close to perfect, so why is it sitting at number 4? Because the Portugal that expats fell in love with 5 or 6 years ago, and the Portugal that exists today are two genuinely different financial realities. And the gap between them is large enough to completely change the calculation for a retiree on Social Security. Start with cost of living. Since 2021, Portugal's cost of living has increased by approximately 34%. Lisbon, which used to feel like a bargain compared to Paris or Amsterdam, no longer does. Rents have surged, groceries have climbed. The city expat content was celebrating in 2018 now sits at pricing that resembles mid-tier Western European cities. The deal's gone. Then there's the visa barrier. And this is where most Social Security retirees hit a wall before the conversation even properly begins. The D8 visa, Portugal's primary long-term residency, pathway for retirees, now requires a minimum monthly income of approximately 3,280 euros, roughly 3,500 US dollars. The average Social Security check in America sits around $1,700 a month. Most retirees on a pure Social Security income don't just struggle in Portugal financially, they can't legally qualify for residency under current rules. The door is closed before they even get to ask whether they'd like what's behind it. The NHR tax program, the non-habitual resident regime that used to be the major financial draw for foreign retirees, has been overhauled. The advantage that attracted so many people is largely eroded. I also want to address something directly. Some retirement content, including earlier versions of this analysis, argues that Portugal being a NATO member makes it a meaningful military target. That argument doesn't hold up cleanly on its own, because by identical logic, Spain, Germany, Italy, and Canada carry the same exposure. The NATO point alone isn't a useful differentiator. The real issue with Portugal is far simpler and more concrete: financial inaccessibility. If your income clears $3,500 a month, Portugal is genuinely excellent. Safe, beautiful, well-organized, strong healthcare, wonderful quality of life. But for Social Security retirees trying to stretch a fixed income, the visa doesn't qualify and the cost of living doesn't cooperate. The brutal filter question for Portugal: does your monthly income consistently clear $3,500 after taxes and existing US obligations? If it doesn't, Portugal isn't your answer right now, regardless of how much you love the idea of it. Who Portugal's right for: retirees with income above $3,000 to $3,500 a month who prioritize European lifestyle, strong institutional stability, and excellent healthcare infrastructure. If that's your situation, Portugal is still a genuinely strong option. If it isn't, keep reading. Number 3, Costa Rica. Now we reach something that actually feels like good news. In 1948, Costa Rica abolished its military completely, constitutionally, permanently. No army, no air force, no navy. That defense budget got redirected into education and healthcare instead. And in the 75 years since, Costa Rica has built one of the most consistently stable, peaceful democracies in the entire Western Hemisphere. No military alliance obligations, no treaty commitments that make it a target. When global tensions escalate between major powers, Costa Rica sits entirely outside that equation, structurally, constitutionally neutral. And that neutrality is held for over 7 decades. From a pure conflict exposure standpoint, this is about as protected as a retirement destination gets. So why is it number 3 and not higher? Because safety is only half the retirement equation. The other half is whether your money can actually support your life there. And this is where Costa Rica has developed a problem that doesn't get discussed honestly enough. Costa Rica has been discovered heavily. And when a country becomes the destination, prices follow demand upward without apology. San Jose now runs $1,800 to $2,200 a month for a couple living normally. Not in luxury, normally. That number has climbed significantly over 5 years and shows no sign of reversing. The Pensionado visa requires $1,000 a month. Most Social Security recipients clear that on paper. But qualifying for a visa and living without constant financial stress are completely different conversations. A retiree on $1,400 a month moves to San Jose thinking they're fine, then discovers their real monthly spend is $1,900. Drawing down savings every month, stressed about every purchase, the retirement they imagined looks nothing like the reality they're living. That's not a rare outcome in Costa Rica right now. It's becoming a common one. Healthcare deserves honesty. The public system, the Caja, is solid by regional standards, but quality and wait times vary significantly by location. Private healthcare costs more than most people budget going in. Language carries more daily weight than most content admits. Spanish is the operating language. Tourist areas manage in English, with government offices, medical appointments, any bureaucratic process. You're working entirely in Spanish. That matters at 70 in a way it simply didn't at 40. Brutal filter question for Costa Rica. After rent, groceries, healthcare, and utilities, does your income leave at least $300 to $400 of genuine breathing room? If the math only barely works on paper, it won't work in practice. Who Costa Rica is right for? Retirees with $2,000 or more per month who prioritize constitutional neutrality, stable democracy, and an established expat community. Under $2,000 a month, financial pressure becomes the entire story and crowds out everything else. Number 2. Paraguay. Let me guess your reaction when I said Paraguay. Either you weren't sure where it is or your immediate instinct was, why would anyone retire there? I understand that completely. Paraguay generates almost no expat content. No retirement influencer is building an audience around Asunción. No major travel publication is doing features on it. Zero profile in the conversation most retirees are having. Before I give you the case for Paraguay, I'm going to give you the honest limitations first. Because if it isn't right for you, I'd rather you know immediately than get sold on the price. Discover the reality 6 months after you've moved. Healthcare is the most significant concern. Paraguay does not have first world medical infrastructure. Private healthcare in Asunción is functional and improving, but it is not at the level of Panama City or San Jose. For a retiree managing complex or chronic health conditions, that gap cannot be minimized. Spanish is non-negotiable. English proficiency outside specific expat pockets of Asunción is limited. You will need functional Spanish to navigate daily life, medical appointments, and government processes. Bureaucracy is slow and friction-heavy. A local attorney isn't optional, it's necessary. Budget for it financially and mentally going in. Now, with all of that clearly on the table, here's why Paraguay still ranks number 2. No military alliances, not a NATO member, landlocked in the center of South America, surrounded by Brazil, Argentina, and Bolivia, geographically removed from every active conflict zone on the planet. No coastline, no strategic resources anyone needs badly enough to cause problems. Paraguay is genuinely invisible to every current global flashpoint. In the environment we're describing, that invisibility is worth something real. The financial numbers are legitimate. A single retiree lives comfortably in Asunción for $900 to $1,200 a month. A couple manages well on $1,400 to $1,700. The Jubilado visa requires just $1,200 a month in income, and Paraguay taxes zero foreign income. Your social security, your pension, anything from outside the country is completely untouched, not reduced, zero. Compare 2 retirees, both on $1,300 a month. One moves to Costa Rica and spends 2 years financially stressed because real costs run $400 above their income. The other moves to Asunción, takes 6 months to find their footing, and ends those same 2 years with $200 to $300 monthly surplus and zero geopolitical exposure. The Paraguay retiree had a harder first year, but they're actually living, not calculating. The brutal filter question for Paraguay: can you function in basic conversational Spanish within 6 months? And are you genuinely comfortable with medical care that is functional but not first world? If either answer is no, the limitations outweigh the advantages for your specific situation. Who Paraguay is right for: independent, adaptable retirees in good baseline health willing to learn Spanish and tolerate bureaucratic friction, whose top priority is maximizing a limited fixed income in a geopolitically invisible environment. Not right for complex medical needs, low ambiguity tolerance, or anyone wanting a smooth first international move. Number 1. Panama. Panama sits at the top of this list, and I want to be precise about what that means before I explain why. It doesn't mean Panama is perfect, it isn't. What it means is this. When you evaluate every factor that genuinely matters for a retiree on Social Security simultaneously, no other country on this list delivers as strong a combined result. Panama wins on balance, not on any single category. On the full picture evaluated together, the Pensionado visa threshold is $1,000 a month, accessible for most Social Security recipients. But what separates Panama from everything else is what comes legally attached to that visa. By Panamanian law, Pensionado holders receive mandated discounts on healthcare, prescription medications, domestic flights, restaurants, hotels, and utilities, written into law, applied every single day for as long as you hold the visa. No other country on this list offers that kind of legally guaranteed retirement benefit package at this income level. The dollarized economy matters more in practice than people initially realize. No Panamanian currency to collapse or inflate against your income. Your Social Security check arrives and is exactly what you spend. No conversion, no exchange rate risk, no waking up to find your purchasing power quietly eroded. In a global environment where currency volatility is a growing concern, that stability compounds in your favor every single month. Healthcare in Panama City is legitimate and documented. Major private hospitals are internationally accredited, staffed by physicians trained in the US and Europe. Cost runs 30 to 40% below comparable US care. Layer your Pensionado discounts on top, and healthcare becomes manageable rather than the dominant source of retirement anxiety. Geography works in Panama's favor. Central America sits entirely outside the active geopolitical fault lines generating instability right now. No NATO commitments, no military entanglements. Panama operates quietly outside the crossfire. Now, the honest limitations. Panama City is not cheap by Latin American standards. A comfortable single-person life runs $1,800 to $2,200 a month. Outside the capital, Boquete, the Azuero Peninsula, the interior, costs drop meaningfully. But Panama City is where first-world medical infrastructure is concentrated, creating a genuine tension between cost and healthcare access. You need to think through carefully. Crime is uneven. Safe, well-maintained neighborhoods, El Cangrejo, Punta Pacifica, Costa del Este, are genuinely comfortable for foreign retirees. But location research before committing is not optional. A scouting trip before signing any lease is necessary, not a luxury. Bureaucracy is real. Paperwork, attorney fees, and wait times surprise Americans expecting efficiency. Go in with realistic expectations, not optimistic ones. Here's the comparison that makes this concrete. A retiree on $1,600 a month who moves to Panama City with realistic expectations, budgets carefully, uses Pensionado discounts consistently, does one scouting trip before committing, ends up with a stable, genuinely comfortable life with access to real health care. The same retiree moving to Costa Rica on $1,600 ends up financially stressed within a year. Same income, completely different daily reality. That gap is exactly what the Pensionado structure and dollarized economy create in practice. The brutal filter question for Panama. Can you consistently cover $1,800 a month without financial stress? And are you willing to do real neighborhood research before committing? If the budget is tight at that number, or you're planning to figure out location after you arrive, the limitations will outweigh the advantages. Who Panama is right for? First-time international retirees who want the smoothest transition without sacrificing healthcare quality or financial stability. Retirees with ongoing medical needs requiring reliable access to quality care. Anyone whose priority is making Social Security work in a stable, dollar-based, legally protected environment. If you want maximum European lifestyle, Portugal edges it. If you're younger, healthy, and want maximum dollar stretch, Paraguay wins. But for the broadest range of retirees making this move for the first time, Panama is the most reliable, most complete answer available right now. Here's the honest summary. No pressure, no urgency, no manufactured panic. The world is more complex and less predictable than it was 5 years ago. That's observable. For people on fixed incomes, complexity and unpredictability have direct financial consequences worth planning around proactively. Georgia offers extraordinary price advantages and genuine cultural warmth, but carries a low probability, high consequence risk profile that works only for mobile, flexible retirees with a real exit strategy already built. Portugal is safe, beautiful, and institutionally excellent, but the visa threshold and cost reality have moved it out of reach for most Social Security budgets. Strong choice above $3,500 a month, not viable below it. Costa Rica is constitutionally neutral, genuinely stable, and has solid infrastructure, but costs have climbed enough that it only works comfortably above $2,000 a month. Below that, financial pressure becomes the retirement. Paraguay is the most affordable option with the lowest geopolitical exposure on this entire list, but it demands Spanish fluency, patience with bureaucracy, good baseline health, and genuine independence. For the right person, it's a serious and criminally underrated answer. Panama delivers the best overall balance of visa accessibility, healthcare quality, currency stability, legal retirement benefits, and transition ease for the broadest range of Social Security retirees, with real limitations around urban costs, neighborhood selection, and bureaucratic friction that require honest preparation. None of these are perfect answers, they're trade-offs. The right trade-off depends entirely on your income, your health, your personality, and how much friction you can absorb. The wrong country won't ruin your retirement overnight. It'll drain it, slowly, quietly, and expensively, until the life you planned looks nothing like the life you're actually living. Choose carefully. Choose based on the full picture, not just the highlights. Now, once you know where to go, the next question is what your money actually buys when you get there. I already broke down exactly what $1,200 a month gets you in 10 countries. Rent, groceries, healthcare, all of it, line by line. That video's right here. Watch it next.